Welcome guys to this video of mine. Today I want to talk about a recent experience that I had with MDMA. And I'm not particularly a big fan of MDMA, to be completely honest with you. But nevertheless, I need to talk to you anyway, so we can also start with this. Really, in recent times, my life has been sort of, in some instances, falling apart, and I tried to fix it as I always fixed it, by working really hard. And that doesn't always work, unfortunately. Sometimes communication is the key and not just working yourself out of any given situation. So let me preface that what I'm going to say with that I come from a family with a deep trauma, as many families. I know it's nothing special, but this history of my family, especially from the mother side, is a little bit special at minimum, because my family were resistance fighters in the Second World War. What does that mean? My grandfather was a journalist and writer, and he was fighting actively against Hitler while being a German in a group called Schulze-Beuys-Gruppe with many others. Unfortunately, that group got captured ultimately after many years of effective work against the Hitler regime, but they all got killed in the most brutal fashion. Some of the most brutal killings in the whole history of the Second World War, and there were many extremely, extraordinarily, brutally killings. But since my family was in a group of Germans, non-Jewish, and many of them educated, but a mix of all types of people, from middle class to upper class, you know, from journalists to doctors, etc. Hitler hated this group specifically and murdered them in the most gruesome way possible. My grandfather was the son of Walter Küchenmeister, and ultimately he was captured with 14 years old for conspirative meetings and in this group, and that only meant that he was alive. That was enough to kill his father and also jail him in a concentration camp, and then ultimately put him in basically in the end of the war in a Strafbataillon. Strafbataillon is like basically they make the prisoners fight. Anyway, this had severe consequences, of course, you know. If your grandfather survived the concentration camp, then that has implications. It is not possible to go through such an experience and come out unblemished. So, let me check if the camera is still running. It is. I have to do that because it's very annoying if you're talking and it's actually not recording, right? So I wanted to quickly check if it's still recording. So this is the preface, and this is only the beginning. I myself had an extremely difficult childhood, and through this difficult childhood I had traumas, which again is nothing special, but since my upbringing was so in vastly different places in the world, you know, over 2 continents and a couple of countries, and with very little stability, and a family breaking apart when I was just about 5 years old in a very dramatic fashion, without any security layers around, because we were in a different country and the whole situation just was what it was. So some severe traumas happened back then, and it's nobody's fault. It was just a situation, I guess, I don't know. And therefore I developed defensive mechanisms, basically, a lot. And those defensive mechanisms have been often misconstrued or misunderstood, of course, because you just see the defensive mechanism, you don't understand the underlying trauma that lies beneath it. So people tried to judge me on that, and that was in times where I was not really capable of understanding this whole thing. Since then I visited a psychologist and learned a lot more about myself and about those things. Back to the actual story. So what happened was, I was going to an event in my city, and I was with a friend, and I took some really good MDMA, some really clean MDMA, because there are different, of course, degrees of purity. That was a very pure one, And I believe I took maybe around 180 to 220 milligrams. And there was a guy that I knew very loosely there, and I sat down and I talked about a lot of traumatic things that concern me, starting from my personal childhood trauma to my family trauma to also the trauma that I recently experienced in my life work, which is also not to underestimate. A lot of people did things that had so devastating effects on my career that it's almost indescribable and unbelievable that people can do such things and that they are still, running around and not have been properly punished for what they did. This is of course because I didn't manage to prosecute them, which they should, of course. Like in some cases, some groups and some individuals did so much damage to me with so much malicious intent that it would have been absolutely more than justified to have legal protection there, which I didn't, out of multiple reasons. First of all, it was my own wrongdoing to not just invest this money into legal protection or insurance, but I just didn't have it at the time. I can still do that, and probably I should, and once I am at the point that I can, I probably will. But I also talked about this, of course, and I recently met a couple of people I'm meeting people that know my project wherever I go, of course. I'm sort of niche famous, if you want, and it has been always great to be niche famous all my life, but it has become a nightmare in recent memory. And not necessarily. Anyway, the guy that I met, another person, after that conversation that I had with that person, telling him about my traumas openly, I met another guy who was a big fan of mine and a great guy, and he knows my project since 15 years. And I listened to his voice, and he's obviously also a representative of this community, such as every other individual, and what he said was really soothing to me, because some people understand that, something was horribly going wrong, and that this person, me, was very much misunderstood, and also there were some people done to me which are not right. And they're still being done to me in some cases. They're just like malicious, There's no other way to say it. If people are actively trying to hurt your career and they have the means to do that, then that cannot be described other than malicious, especially if you're talking about an individual like myself who dedicated his life to this, with a big expertise of 15 years on my back. It was maybe the most traumatic experience in my life, what I was going through in the past years, but I'm not talking a lot about it. I'm not talking a lot about it because I'm not a great communicator, maybe. In a way, I am. In one way, I can talk incredibly well, I'd say. I can even write really well if I want to. But then still, I'm not, I'm an artist. I'm somebody who chose this way deliberately, and this way is also a way of solitude. So even at the times when I had a relationship, for example, I've spent a lot of time alone, and that was sometimes hard for my partners, of course, and that is just a thing when you do this choice of becoming really good in something really complicated. Then you spend a lot of time alone. I think I share that with a lot of other people around the globe. Of course, I know that. It doesn't matter if it's physics, football, or music. If you're so dedicated to something, then yeah. So, as I said in the beginning, I don't like MDMA, but it helped me so much to talk about my traumas that I can only say that it was a successful, almost therapy session. That person, by the way, that I met talked, as I said, very soothingly about the project, and also that he wouldn't understand why people talk so badly about me. And this is something that I've heard many times in my life, and I will hear it a lot more in my life, where people are experiencing me for the first time a little bit more close up, which are, of course, the minutest minority of all people have spent time with me, truly, and got to know me. And then they always say, "Oh, you're so great. Why do people talk so badly about you?" Well, this is where shit just went horribly wrong. It's like, of course, it's my responsibility to take care of my reputation and so forth, no question. And did I do everything correct in my life? Oh my god, no, I did many mistakes, but usually I take account for those mistakes, and I'm just not what the people that don't, vehemently, actively don't like me, / some of them, I guess, hate me, what they don't understand. However, I hope that you enjoyed this little video of mine. I'm trying my best, guys. This is, of course, super true. I'm working my ass off, but as I said in the beginning, it's not about working myself out of this. It's about understanding myself out of that, growing myself out of that, evolutionizing myself out of that, and communicating myself out of that, which turns out to be more complicated than I would have ever anticipated, because you cannot anticipate crisis, right, if you haven't experienced it in that form, and I just haven't before. So I'm in this weird situation where I had a career crisis really late. Again, not the first human who is experiencing such a thing, and this is the moment where life really tests you and you can decide, do you want to push through or do you want to give up? And till now I'm still giving it my total all, really working hard on myself, and of course also on my music. I never stopped working daily for hours on music, no matter how much my output is or how good you like it or not, but I'm working consistently since 15 years. With that said, much love, stay blessed, and I talk to you hopefully very soon. Bye bye.